Hi everyone. So I'm just going to ask you all to continue to be a little patient with me with the sound. I thought we had resolved things, but the last two videos I recorded, I had some issues again with the microphone. So I'm just using the regular microphone system here on my laptop, and I know some of you have complained about that as well. Um, if the sound just really bothers you and you can't make it through it, then go ahead and click off. I completely understand. But for those of you who are moving through this time of year and perhaps having some old patterns or a revisitation of old stories, old cycles in your life, I wanted to make sure that I got this video out to you all closer to the beginning of this month than the end. And there was a video recently where I discussed revisiting old wounds, old stories that you may have really felt like you've let go of, and how frustrating it can be when you have to revisit something again, to go back into something again, to look at, the story, the individuals involved in the story, yourself, the difficult or negative mental patterns you may have created for yourself around the trauma from a situation. And if you're someone who, similar to my personal story, has dealt with a lot of severe religious conditioning, you're also looking at, PTSD around thought patterns that were inculcated in you, to be really honest, a form of brainwashing at a very young age, right? So the first thing that I want to address in this video, and I said it in the previous video in this series, but I'm going to say it again at the beginning of this video, is you haven't failed. You haven't failed to do your healing work correctly if you're revisiting a memory, a wound, a pattern, a relationship energy, if something is coming back again to be looked at and explored in regards to your shadow work. So the first thing that I want to say to you is don't be hard on yourself. Remember that this healing journey is based on the sacred feminine. It's a spiral. It's not linear. So you don't get something done and then you never have to revisit it again. When you come back to it, you're looking at it and you have an opportunity to heal from a fresh perspective. You can go deeper now. You can look at another layer within this, and you can offer yourself integration in a different way. And this can be very impactful. And really, it's very exciting, even though it can feel intense and you can feel like you failed at first. So I just want to preface this with that, and I want to say to you that I wouldn't engage in card work around this until you've kind of allowed yourself to be in a balanced space with revisiting an old wound or an old story, okay? You don't want to engage in shadow work unless you're feeling balanced. So the middle of a freak out or the middle of a breakdown around something like this isn't really the time to step into heavy shadow work. You want to approach that from a space of balance and awareness, and most especially self-love, gentleness, compassion, okay? So I just want to preface this with that. And then I'm going to give you a card spread today for you to work around this revisitation of something old again in regards to your healing journey. You can adapt this to work for yourself in a way that feels right for you. Please feel free to do that. And I'm going to show you, this is a 3-card spread, but we're going to draw clarifiers off of it. And I'm going to show you how you can do that so that you can get into the nitty-gritty with this here in a way that's going to give you insight and clarification and serve as a jumping off point for inquiry or for meditative journey in regards to this, okay? So this is like starting the healing journey for this. It's giving us insight into why we're revisiting something that we've been working on in our personal journey probably for a long time, okay? So you're going to want a tarot deck and you're going to want a oracle deck, or maybe you have 2 tarot decks, whatever feels right for you. For this example, I'm going to be using the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, and my clarifier is going to be the Lantern Oracle. This is a great oracle deck for shadow work. It's designed for shadow work, number one. I feel like it's very connected to Hecate, and it's really going to give you insight into what the patterns are. So if you're currently in a space in your journey where you're working on shadow work, this is definitely a deck I would recommend purchasing. I promise you it will be worth the investment, okay? And I'm going to include the set spread meanings in the description box below. So if you're watching this, you don't have to stress about writing it down unless you would like to. You can reference the description box below for insight into the set spread meanings. I do not normally work with set spreads. So I'm not a real stickler for place the cards in this series of positions. Lay your 3 cards out to start however it feels appropriate for you, okay? But what I would like you to do is to start this tarot work by giving yourself a few moments to connect in with your spirit tribe, to connect in with your higher self, and to set the intention that you're going to get clarity on why this is coming up to be looked at again in regards to your shadow work, okay? So you're going to take a few minutes and check in with that. And you're going to let yourself, see, feel, hear what's coming around again to be looked at. And maybe, also you're going to give yourself a few minutes to feel maybe a sense of frustration or irritation that you're back in this place again. But then we're going to just inhale and exhale that out, and we're going to start to shuffle our cards. And we're holding the intention that we're getting clarity into why this is coming around again, okay? And I want you to hold that intention as you're shuffling. And then we're going to draw 3 cards from our tarot deck, okay? And we're holding this intention. All right, and again, as I said, you can lay the cards out however feels right for you. And then we're going to get clarification on these card positions. So our first card position, I'm going to read these out, and then I'm going to give you an example of how you can interpret this, so that if you're feeling confused about how to do this, I'm going to walk you through a mock reading so that you can see how you can work with this and get more out of it than just, I randomly pulled a bunch of cards and I don't know what they mean for me here, okay? So our first card position is, why is this pattern, memory, story, use the term that feels right for you here, resurfacing at this time? So why is it resurfacing at this time? That's our first card position. Our second card position is, what am I now ready to understand about myself in regards to this shadow? So now that we're revisiting, now that we've come back around, yet we're in a different vantage point on this spiral, what is it that we're now ready to understand from this vantage point? Not from where we were when we first started this journey, but from the vantage point of now, okay? And then our third card position is, how can I continue to honor and integrate what is asking for my attention at this time? So how can I continue to honor and integrate what is asking for my attention at this time? That's our third card position, okay? So we're looking at these 3 cards, and then off of each of these 3 cards, we're going to draw a clarifier from our oracle deck. I'm doing this at the onset of this reading right now before I even dive into the card spread itself, so that I'm not overthinking what I've drawn. So I'm drawing a clarifier for 1, I'm drawing a clarifier for 2, and I'm drawing a clarifier for 3. Here's what I would recommend you do for this reading. Have a journal and a pen with you and journal out each card's position and what's coming up for you as you look at it. You're going to journal about what the meaning is from a reading perspective. And then I want you to journal about what comes up for you emotionally. Okay, so you're going to spend some time with this spread. Like, it's only a 3-card spread, but you're probably going to spend maybe 30 minutes with this. Like, you really want to give this the energy, give this your all. So I'm going to give you an example now of how you can interpret based on spending time with the cards. Okay, so card number 1 is, why is this pattern resurfacing at this time? And I have the Magician with the repair card. Making amends rather than fun times reveals a relationship's true constitution. So if I were looking at this as me dealing with a childhood trauma, again from my childhood that I felt I've already worked on, maybe 10 years ago when I started my spiritual, I started my spiritual journey more than 10 years ago, but let's just say 10 years ago for this. Why is it resurfacing at this time? The Magician is letting me know that I'm ready and I have the tools to go within and look at the relationship with this parent at an even deeper level. I can really get some insight into where my parent was coming from their perspective in regards to the trauma, and where I now am. And making amends here, or choosing to offer us both forgiveness in this situation, I'm now ready to do that at a deeper level, right? This is letting me know that there's a way in which I can offer myself and them forgiveness at a new level now in the return to this, right? Now, of course, it's up to me if that aspect of forgiveness is something that I'm going to do at an energetic level, or if it's an area where I would have a conversation with a parent, if that were even possible. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily, the repair here doesn't necessarily have to happen by communication, physical communication with the person involved. It can very much happen at the energetic level, through journaling, through writing it out, through talking it out in front of your altar or with someone that you trust, or in therapy, and like working on acknowledging what the dynamic was in this relationship and or connection, and then being able to offer yourself and or the other person forgiveness or understanding, right? But the Magician is letting us know that this pattern is resurfacing at this time because I now have the tools at my disposal to really go into and deal with the story at a more nuanced level now. Now I can really get into it, right? It's like that analogy of the onion with the layers, right? So you have your clarifier, you have the traditional tarot that you're working with here, and you're going to spend time with, you know, the traditional meanings, with intuitively what you're picking up, and then also really honoring the story and honoring what you're ready to look at within that story at this time. Okay. Now we move on to card position number 2, which is, what am I now ready to understand about myself in regards to this shadow? And just to show you here, I have the King of Swords and radical self-acceptance. You are perceived the way you perceive yourself. So I'm now ready to understand how I move about in the world and how I am perceived based on the wounds from this core relationship in my childhood. Perhaps I come across as the King of Swords, and perhaps there's a real part of myself that I've cut off and I don't acknowledge based on the exchange, the interchange with this parent in regards to this shadow aspect that I'm ready to revisit here. This King of Swords could represent the individual, and that I'm ready to look at how this relationship has played out in regards to my core childhood wounds. Maybe the wound that I'm ready to look at replayed out with another individual in my life. And I can see how the core wounds from that parent I replayed with an adult energy in my life and the experience of an adult relationship in my life, right? But my clarification is letting me know that I'm ready to understand that I have to accept all of these parts of me, including the ego that's trying to protect me based on the trauma that I experienced, right? So if this was really a reading, I would be looking at how am I perceived by others, right? With this King of Swords energy here. And how am I trying to protect myself as I move through relationships and connections in my life now as an adult, based on the suppositions I've made from the wounds from childhood, right? So I'm looking at that nuanced layer. Now, let's say I feel a little bit stuck here and I need some more clarification. So I'm going to turn to my tarot here. So let's say I need clarification into how am I expressing this in the world that I can't, and that I'm not able to see at this time. Let's say I want some clarification on that. And I'm going to draw from tarot here, and this is letting me know right away that this is playing out for me in romantic partnership, right? Like, I'm experiencing where I'm trying to protect myself in regards to my vulnerability in relationships that are romantic, where I might feel very vulnerable with another individual. So this is, do you see how we're talking through it? We're working through it, which is why the journal is necessary. And if you don't like to write, see 3 of Swords at the bottom of the deck here, guys? That's going to also inform this, which is why we take our time with this spread, and why I really encourage you to journal and write everything out. If that doesn't feel right, talk it out. Talk it out in the notes in your the notes app in your phone. Like, get it out. The more that you're talking, you're processing it, you're going to start to have these realizations, right? And then you draw the clarification. It's helping you understand at a deeper level here how this is playing out. Okay, so that's an example how you can get even more clarification based on what shows up for you card-wise in that second pull. Our third pull is, how can I continue to honor and integrate what is asking for my attention at this time? And I have 6 of Wands and responding, not reacting. The only control we have is in how we respond to the hand we are dealt. I love this. So how I can continue to honor and integrate is in choosing to reframe that radical self-acceptance and to believe in myself, to believe in my self-worth here, in my value, and that I can be successful in integrating the wounds from childhood trauma. You know, if you've dealt with a lot of this on your path, at times it can feel overwhelming and you feel like you're never going to be able to get out of survival mode and start being able to shift some of these really deeply ingrained patterns which showed up as survival mechanisms for us in difficult childhoods. So this, to me, if this was a reading I was doing for myself, I would be looking at, I can continue to honor and integrate by celebrating my successes in this area. And by the beauty of being able to, this time around, looking at this core wound with the parent, I'm going even deeper into that work. And I'm getting even clearer about where those patterns originated and how I can offer compassion and understanding to myself. And how that plays out now, how I can continue to work with this energy, is that it's going to help me to be able to respond, not react. So I'm not going to be reacting so much from that trauma brain, from that trauma mentality. Instead, I can be looking at it and have that moment's awareness to understand, oh, I've been triggered here and I'm going into a reactive pattern. And now I can shift how I'm going to choose to respond instead of react to another person, the situation, however it's showing up in your life as needing attention and integration at this time. So again, let's say I need some clarification on that 6 of Wands. So clarify the 6 of Wands for me. That's what I would say. I do think it's actually important to say that out loud. It makes a really big difference. So I'm asking for clarification here on my 6 of Wands, and I have the Queen of Wands. If this was a real reading for me, this would be the significator for my mother here. And so I can see that this really is time for me to do a lot of integration work and shadow work and acknowledgement and healing around the wound I have with my mother. So, pay attention to the court cards in these readings because they really can be powerful significators for individuals that are related to why you're showing up to do shadow work in the first place. And in the acknowledgement of that, it's not a shaming or a blaming of that individual. You're looking at this so that you can understand where your shadows lie and how you can integrate so that you can step out of reacting, right? So this would clarify for me that I'm encouraged to keep going with the work I've been doing around healing wounds in regards to mother and the sacred feminine, and I'm going to be successful at that integration, right? So this is an example of a spread that you can do for yourself around recurring patterns or stories that you're being called to look at in your shadow work at this time. It's a nice jumping off point. This is by no means meant to be like, you do this spread and you're done. You don't have to do the work. But it's going to give you some insight into the direction and path that you want to follow going forward. And, I would say feel free to draw clarifiers off of these cards. I wouldn't draw 5 clarifiers off of each card, but you guys know I'm always going to encourage you to calm down with clarification cards. However, in this situation, 1 clarification card from your Oracle deck and a 2nd clarification card from your Tarot deck is certainly something that, as you saw, really helped me to flesh out the structure of the reading itself and what's really underpinning all of this. And if you find yourself kind of shying away from going really deep in this reading, I would say put a pin in the reading, leave it out, come back to it later on once you've gotten some space from it and kind of been able to mull it over, and then journal some more and see what comes out when you've kind of like let yourself release the resistance to looking at what the cards are actually telling you. So, you know, give yourself the gift of taking your time with this, that you don't have to rush the understanding process with looking at these cards. So I hope this has helped you if you are working on shadow work and integration of a recurring theme or story around trauma for yourself. And as I said, I will put the card spread meanings and positions in the description box below for you. I am sending you, as always, much love and many blessings, guys. I'll see you in the next video.